Hello and welcome. I'm Kevin B. Tudor, and let's take a look at some basics for using Excel for statistical work. First thing we want to go over is the Excel workspace. So here we have on the screen a brand new blank Excel document, and on here you'll notice that there currently is one worksheet on the bottom, and on that worksheet we have a number of little boxes that are called cells. Each cell has an address and can contain values or formulas, and we'll take a look at the basics of how to enter both of those as we proceed today. So let's first look at basic entry of data values here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on one cell, doesn't matter where in the document the cell is, and once that cell is green, that means that cell is selected, so we're going to do our operation to that cell. So now on the keyboard, I'm going to press 3 and enter, and now the 3 is a data value. Other ways that data can be entered are starting from any cell, type the number in, and by default in Excel, if you enter a value and press enter, it will move to the next box below there. So let's enter another value here, 12, and also you can use the arrows that will move the selection and entry box to wherever you want it. So let's put in an 8 here, and let's put in a 7 here. Now you have to be a little careful in Excel when you're entering data. Notice that if I take a value that already exists and I select it by left clicking on that value, that anything that I enter now is going to overwrite the data in that cell. So here I've selected the cell with 3 in it, and I enter a new value, 555, and it automatically replaces that. And so what you want to do if you want to change the value in a cell is double click on that value, and notice that raises your blinking cursor and allows you to edit that information. And what we have just created here is a small data array. In Excel, multiple data values contained in multiple cells that are next to each other is called a data array. They can be just in one column, as in our example here, or they can be more than one column and more than one row, so a whole box of values. In general, if you're entering your data into Excel, you're going to be a little better off just going with one long column instead of several rows, because most features in Excel will work with either rows and columns or a single column, but several won't. So it's a good practice to always make one long column. So what I've done here is I clicked on my first data value and dragged the mouse down to the last data value. And now we have a selected data array. After the cat walks on it and changes it, we have a selected data array, and we're now ready to do stuff to it. Another quick tip I want to point out to you here, let's change this back to 3. Another quick tip that I want to point out to you here is anytime you do have an array of data values circled, if you look down at the bottom of the Excel board, it'll give you your average, count, and sum of those values by default. So if you just need a back of the cuff number to use for a calculation or something, you can just circle them, go down here, and it'll give you those responses. Another really cool feature of Excel is its autofill feature. So if we say want a list of even numbers, we go to a blank cell, I'm going to enter a 2 here, I'm going to enter a 4 here, and that's going to tell it the sequence that we want. So I'm now going to circle both of those 2, 4, the beginning of my sequence. which in itself is a small data array. And now I'm going to use the very powerful tool, the little green square here in the lower right, and I'm going to grab that and circle down. And it's a bit hard to see here, but notice in the mouse that it's saying 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, and it's going to follow that sequence and fill in all those values for you. And you also have a box here for autofill options, and in this case it automatically decided that I wanted to do a fill series, which means keep going with the cells that I have in there already. You can also select these values. The other common one to use would be copy cells. So if I just wanted the exact same information to appear in the following cells, I would select copy cells. And it would, in this case, give me 242424 because that is what the original selection was. Okay, covered that. Let's get rid of those and let's learn how we do basic statistical stuff in Excel. So as we've already looked at today, you can go to any cell and type in a literal value. So that cell just contains a value. The other option in Excel is to enter a formula in a cell, and formulas can be anywhere from very basic math equations to very much more complicated functions that Excel provides to do a wide variety of statistical computations. So let's take a look over here and I'm going to just start right here, and let's actually, I'm going to type in over here my label of what I'm going to compute here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out the sum of all of these 5 variables that I've entered over here. So as always, we need to start our cell entry with an equal sign. That tells Excel that what follows is an equation or a formula, and it's going to be looking for the cell addresses of that formula to do what you request of it. So one way to enter a cell value is to type it in directly. So if we reference the 3 value in our list, we see that is in column B, row 4. So I can just type in that address into the formula cell, and Excel will help you out by highlighting that cell to show that it's been selected. So I'll just enter plus here. I can now enter B5. Capitalization doesn't matter when entering cell addresses. And plus, now a second method of entering a single cell would be to just go to that cell and click on it and keep joining them with pluses as we're looking for a sum. So once we've entered the whole formula here, we press enter, and Excel does what the formula says and gives us that result. So let's look at a more efficient way of doing that. Let's do the sum again. So here we're going to use a built-in Excel formula. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type SU, and once you enter a few first letters, it'll give you a list of all the formulas that match those letters. So usually when you type a formula out, you can just type a couple letters, go down to the list, double click it, and it's going to set you up with your formula entry. And notice that it tells you what it expects you to enter in each position. So in this case, you see number 1 is highlighted. So that's going to be the first value in our calculation. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select the whole array at once and show you how that works. So I go over here to the top value in my array, click and hold, circle it down to the last value in my array, and notice that Excel has defined that data array as B4 colon B8. That means every value from B4 to B8 are included in that operation. And we're just going to close our formula with an equals, tell it enter there, and let's now find our count. Count is just how many values are in the list. So here, let's do count, and I'll just type all that in. And as with cell addresses, you can use lowercase letters for functions. That's fine. Excel will change them to uppercase once you enter those all. And we're going to do the same thing, enter a data array here, and press enter. You wouldn't need to close that equals down. And now let's calculate the mean of this distribution. So as we know, the mean is the sum of the values divided by the count. So let's use some of our new formulas to do that calculation. So I'm going to start off with the equals, telling you that we have a formula here. I'm then going to click on the sum, and slash means divide by, and I'm going to click on the count. And there we have our nicely computed mean for that. And also, if you don't want to compute the measure manually like that, Excel also has a function for the mean. In this case, it's called the average function, even though that it's the statistical mean. And here again, we're just going to circle that whole data array and enter it and wind up with 6.8 as our mean. Let's now take a quick look at an absolute reference compared to a relative reference. And we'll use those to construct a brief frequency and a relative frequency table for this small data set here. So here I've just circled my data to select it. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'll just come down here below to an empty cell. I can tell it paste, and notice that we have a number of different options here. In Excel, if you just do a regular paste, it's going to paste the formula that's contained within that cell, not the actual value or the computed value that's showing. So for example, if we were to copy our equals sum formula, that equals sum formula would be pasted in our new cell. So here we're going to use the paste values, which just strips all the formulas and everything off and just takes what you see is what you get. Now we would be able to paste again. Notice that the selection is blinking green here, so we're just going to hit escape to end that copy operation. Now, when we talk about an absolute versus relative reference, probably the more common of the two is a relative reference. So with a relative reference, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it equals B13, for example. So this is just this cell that we just typed looks at that reference cell and gives its value. And because this is a relative reference, it's not concerned with where on the page the value is that it's looking at. It's concerned with where it is relative to the new cell. So in this case, because the cell that we copied is 2 cells to the left and in the same row, then whatever is in that position relative to that formula will be the response. So let's copy that cell. So I just did a Control-C on that. We'll go down 1 and paste, and notice that now, because it's a relative reference, it follows that position down on the list. So I can go here to the bottom box, I can drag down through the list, and notice that the relative reference is going to get the value that's in that relative position 2 places left of that box. If I were to put one to the right here, it wouldn't pick it up because it would be reading this blank cell. So that is a relative reference. Let's now look at an absolute reference. So an absolute reference is indicated in Excel by putting a $ symbol before the row and column values. So here I've entered $B, $13. So what that means is no matter where on the page you copy that value, it's always going to refer back to that same cell of B13. And even if you go multiple rows, columns, always going to look to that exact same cell. You also have the ability to include one $ and not the other, and that would allow you to make a more fancier formula to get your work done for you. So that is absolute versus relative referencing in Excel. And now let's take a look at our frequency and make a little frequency table here. So in this relative frequency table is going to combine both of those skills of relative and absolute referencing. So let's go ahead and just label this a little bit. Frequency, and over here we're going to come up with the relative frequency. Remember that in statistics, a frequency always means the count of something, so that's how many of what each value has in it, and relative frequency is the proportion of that category's count divided by the total count of all the categories. So let's first come up with that total count of all the categories. And you could do it in the next following cell, but it visually gets a little bit confusing unless you format it. So we'll just leave a blank cell there. So first thing we're going to do here is let's build a cell that has the sum of all our values, because that's going to always be the denominator for the relative frequency calculation. So we'll go here and enter SU, double click sum, circle the data, and press enter to lock that in. So again, we have our sum. We confirm that by our upper calculations. Now, what we need to do is come over here to the relative frequency, and we need to enter a formula that's going to take each frequency value in the left column and divide it by that sum. So in order to do that, we're going to say equals, and we're going to start with a relative reference. So I'm just going to click on that first data value, which is in cell B13 here. So notice that we have B13, the address without any dollar signs in it. That means it's relative. Now I'm going to press the slash on my keypad for division, and I'm going to come down here and click on the sum cell. So let's start this equation out with an equals to tell Excel that we're going to enter a formula here. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to enter the first frequency value, the cell to that left. Notice that it has entered without dollar signs. That's the default way that Excel provides addresses as relative references. And next thing we're going to need to do is tell it the sum column, because we don't want to add it, we want it to divide it. So we're going to take 3 divided by the total of all the values, which is 34. So to get that, I'm going to come down here and enter B19, and let's just enter this and see what happens. So here we have a relative frequency of 8.8%. If you wanted to, you could come down here and hit format cells, go over to percentage, leave it set at 2 decimal places, okay, and it's going to do a really nice job of formatting it for you. So we now know that the value 3, or the class that has 3 values in it, comes up to 8.82%. So now what's going to happen if we do our drag copy here? It's going to say that, give us an error, because that drag copy has both links as relative, so it's going to move both down by 1, because that's where we are in relation to the original formula. So we got the 4 that we wanted, but now we're not getting the right sum. So let's get rid of that cell, and we're going to fix that by going up to the first cell that we put together, and we need to change the B19 to an absolute reference. Now, a couple ways to do that. You could manually move your cursor and type the $sign in. The cool way to do it, though, is put your mouse cursor in the address and press F4, and it's going to automatically make it into a relative reference for you. So there we have our 8.82%, but now with an absolute reference. So we're going to drag that down to all of those values, and we now have the percentage of the total that each value represents, and we can confirm that our calculations are right by making sure that those values add up to 100%, which it looks like they do here. and that covers relative and absolute cell references. All right, that's all we're going to look at today. I hope that was of some help to you, and thank you, and bye.